Counselor, how are you?
It's across the hall, and then I realized the workshop was over here, so I came in and left it.
Doing all right?
Yeah, good. You?
Good. You're on. Mayor?
Hi, good evening and welcome to the workshop for January 17th, 2023. First on the agenda, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Cousins. He's going to give us an update on our Lake Auburn watershed protection measures.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Tonight on your agenda, I guess that's on. Tonight on your agenda, you have a couple of items that are additional protections to the Lake Auburn watershed. So we thought it was a good chance to just go over what you've already done as far as ordinance changes that have either been put in place fully or started through the planning board process and will be coming back to you shortly here in the next couple of months. As well as just briefly go over the two changes that you're considering initiating tonight and answer any questions. The effort so far, I think, really has been about having ordinances that are transparent, that are easy to understand, that are science-based, and overall, based on the package of ordinance changes that are being considered or some of which have already been put in place, reducing the overall development potential in the watershed. Being science-based and logical and best management practices also, I think, opens up the opportunity to bring some of those changes to upper watershed towns and have a really strong position for advocating for those to be put in place in part or wholly in other towns. The need and response. The lake is at risk. We've had blooms in the lake, despite the significant restrictions that we've had in place in the Lake Auburn watershed. We've still had the need for in-lake treatments, the alum treatment, a few years ago. We're really trying to ensure that these changes are easier for homeowners and property owners to understand. Again, science-driven, that they're better for the environment and water quality, and that the combined effect of the overall changes results, again, in reduced development potential within the Auburn portions of the watershed where the city has control. Progress so far. I don't know if everybody connects this one to a Lake Auburn watershed protection, but I think it's a relatively important one. We've made a lot of progress in updating zoning standards to encourage housing outside of the watershed. That reduces demand on the rural areas by allowing for housing in town where we already have existing public utilities to take advantage of. Updated phosphorus control ordinances were put in place earlier this year. It's a fairly stringent requirement for any new developments in the Lake Auburn watershed to use low impact development standards, and those standards are based on the state of Maine best management practices for stormwater control in watersheds most at risk. It's a state manual that we rely on. What's more stringent in Auburn, I think, than anywhere else in the state as far as those phosphorus controls is the trigger that requires them. Most towns would allow a larger footprint of development, larger than 200 square feet before they're triggered, but what we're really seeing with the 200 square foot trigger is that it's relatively difficult to size a BMP to only treat 200 square feet. So when somebody's making an improvement to their property that triggers the treatment, they're actually providing some treatment for a slightly larger footprint than just the 200 that's new. So overall, could result in better treatment for existing impervious area. You're considering updating the subsurface wastewater standards. This would require the replacement systems within the watershed to meet the same standard as a new system, whereas currently only new systems, about 50 of them under the current ordinance, are required to meet the higher standard with deeper soils and higher separation to groundwater. The new standard would require any new systems as well as the 270 grandfathered systems to have a higher separation to groundwater than what's currently required, significantly higher, in most cases 24 inches or more higher than what's required right now. And we see that as one of the big benefits of the septic change. Requiring new systems to have a 36-inch separation between the bottom of the drain field and seasonal high water, groundwater, similar to the last one. But the current ordinance is using the existence of 36 inches of soil above the seasonal high groundwater table, ledge, or limiting factor as a determinant of whether or not the lot is buildable. But then it only requires 24 inches of actual separation from the installed bottom of the system to the groundwater. The proposed ordinance would not use that 36 as determination for whether or not the lot's buildable, but it would require that you build a 36-inch separation, 36 inches of soil that meet specific criteria for draining slowly enough to actually provide sound wastewater renovation and treatment, and would be a substantial improvement in the function of each of those individual systems. We know that because we relied on the soils to determine if a lot's buildable, that if we do something different, even if it's for better wastewater treatment, that it will create some additional buildable lots. As you know, you've been considering increasing the minimum lot size within the watershed wherever it's currently 1 acre per new house lot to 3 acres, which would cut the density down to a third of what's allowed right now in those 1 acre lot size area. Work in progress. We'll be asking LawPEC to take a more active role in ordinance-related permit reviews, compliance efforts. That will allow the burden of watershed protection to be shared among the communities that use the water. Considering subsurface wastewater inspection program, the Planning Board recommended that we institute an inspection program as part of the adoption of the septic standards. So you'll be asked to weigh in on that as we consider those ordinance amendments. And increasing setbacks for agricultural uses from streams, tributary streams, or the lake itself. Considering amending the Lake Auburn watershed boundary. You had considered this once before. It was repealed. We have had the benefit of additional look at that through peer reviews and through our own consultant to take another look at that. There are small areas that were taken out of the watershed in the original map that the consultants agree that the data is not as solid as it is for the rest of the parcel. So we think we have an opportunity to rely on the multiple consultants' opinion, make the area that's taken out of the watershed slightly smaller until more investigation can be done for groundwater movement in the area that they don't agree on, and then still move forward with a portion of that boundary change to make the watershed, the regulatory watershed, match the actual drainage patterns of the area surrounding Lake Auburn. Prohibiting so-called septic farms. The current ordinance allows for one property owner with the right soils to sell access to those soils through easements or otherwise to abutting lots to make those abutting lots buildable. The new proposed ordinance would require that the septic system be on the same lot and essentially eliminate that concern where you have a concentration of many septic systems in a small area where there's just less chance for the ground to provide treatment if there's a concentrated disposal of wastewater. So tonight, based on direction from you at previous meetings, you'll be considering sending an order to the Planning Board for 2 additional watershed protections. The first of which is one that comes out of peer reviews and reviews with our consultant, FB Environmental, is that currently you can install septic systems within 300 feet of Lake Auburn if you meet certain soil criteria. The council is going to consider tonight asking the Planning Board to hold a public hearing and consider an outright prohibition of any new first-time subsurface wastewater systems within 300 feet of the lake. And the second, I think our consultants as well as staff have recognized that the ag zone has provided significant protection to the lake with no new houses connected to farms over the last 15 to 20 years. We didn't look back any further than that. But it was raised as a question, especially with LD 2003 coming, that you could still have houses accessory to farms permitted in that portion. So the council's considering tonight really closing that door by changing the ag resource protection portions of the watershed, which is over 4,000 acres of land within Auburn, within the Lake Auburn watershed, and 73% of the land within the watershed, to a conservation or natural resource protection zone that would prohibit new single-family homes connected to farms. That's the only way they would have been permitted before, as well as eliminate a threat that our consultant had identified early on. New animal farms. If there were large animal farms with high concentrations of animals, that would represent a significant threat to water quality within the Lake Auburn watershed. So that's the work in progress. I think our goal is ensuring that changes are easier to understand to a homeowner, as I said in the beginning, better for the environment and in turn for the water quality of Lake Auburn, and that the changes overall result in reduced development potential in the watershed. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or we could go over the resolves or orders that you have in the packet tonight.
Any questions? I just want to, before anybody asks, and hopefully you do, just for clarity, this has been an ongoing process now for several years, actually. And this is always the intent, and I think bringing everything from intent into reality, I think is important. So, I mean, we really have been on this path now as a council, as a city for quite some time. We're just continuing on it. I think this really clarifies some of the misconceptions that might be out there. And I think several of the peer reviews on FB Environmentals, reaffirms that our decision and our path was the correct one. So thank you for doing that and summarizing. It'll be good to, finally get this done and be able to actually work with the upper watershed towns for them to do the same thing. Because if memory serves me, 50% of all the pollutants into Lake Auburn were coming from the upper watershed, correct?
A significant portion is, yeah.
Eric, I've got a couple of uses up in the neighborhood. One is a new one with a person who's acquired a horse, and they're on fairly steep terrain. And then there's another example where somebody's got pretty much a garden. It's like a large garden, but it's commercial technically. So the point of the person with the garden is could there be like a de minimis standard for crops versus horse farming or animal husbandry? I think that's the biggest thing is basically manure is the problem. And I know the Water District or Watershed Protection Commission is working on that. There's a farm in my neighborhood that produces a lot of horse manure, and they periodically have to address that because it's, above the lake and it's not being removed. And, so I think there's probably more work to do on that, and that may be their domain versus ours, but
Yeah, I think we'll have to sort through that with the planning board as well as the council, what the goals are, but there may be still some allowance for somebody to raise, animals for personal use or a small farm. We'll have to figure out where you want to draw that line.
Anybody else? No? I think, we have the resolves. Oh, sorry, Dana?
Yeah, so looking into, I was trying to find the specific language. So in the second part of the meeting where we're going to look at the wastewaters, prohibiting subsurface wastewater disposal within 300 feet of Lake Auburn. I could bring this up then, but I might as well talk now. There's some language here where you're basically altering something that's existing to specifically talk about Lake Auburn. And it looks like before it was good for any lake, pond, or year-round or intermittent stream. And so I wonder, are we ceasing to protect other bodies of water by making that specific to Lake Auburn?
Yeah, so this chapter is entirely about Lake Auburn. It's in the Lake Auburn Watershed Protection Overlay. So it is specific to the Lake Auburn watershed, and I guess it probably didn't come out clearly in the text. The change to 400 feet for soils described as sandy or gravelly and references the 4D profile in the subsurface wastewater rules. That's a change that's already been through the planning board process, and then this change would add the outright prohibition of septic systems within 300 feet regardless of soils. But that, you can't tell the difference, I guess, in this text with what's already been through the planning board process.
But to be clear, that's just for Lake Auburn's watershed. I mean, we're not talking about the Taylor Pond watershed. Not all watersheds are created equal with with an equal usage, if you would. But I wouldn't go to the assumption that we're not protecting those ponds, because we have, those bodies of water.
All the other protections would remain in place for the tributaries, with those really well-drained soils having a 400-foot setback. The way we've drafted this, it doesn't apply the 300-foot in all soils to tributaries, but that's up to the council if you wanted to. But that would be a lot of land that would apply to, as opposed to what was recommended by the consultant and a peer review consultant was a 300-foot setback from the lake itself.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I just want to make that clarification.
I got a question too. Where you're saying we shouldn't have more than one septic system on one piece of land, why is that really an issue?
So what we've seen with the current standard, because the soils are relatively rare, we've seen people find the soils that meet the Lake Auburn watershed standard, the 36 inches of existing soils from the surface down to groundwater, and then sell rights to multiple surrounding property owners. So you end up with multiple septic systems in these really well-drained soils. What is proposed is that would not be allowed for first-time new systems, but if you had a small lot in the watershed with an existing house and your septic system failed and you didn't have a suitable spot, it would allow for you to site your system on the adjacent lot with approval of the plumbing inspector. But you'd have to demonstrate why you can't site it on your existing lot, and it couldn't be a first-time new system for that exception.
Do we actually know there's more than one of them places that are out there that we've actually bought off or sold off?
I know of one that has multiple systems. We do have other ones, and we could find them for you. I don't know exactly how many. We do have others that have their septic system either across the road or on an adjacent parcel, but I don't know of more than one situation where a homeowner has sold multiple easements for septic systems. And usually there's a reason for somebody to want to site their replacement system on the adjacent lot. They wouldn't do it by choice, but the soils on their lot are not suitable, or there's not room, so they look elsewhere.
I think we should hold off on looking at the resolves and looking at the red line verbiage until the actual order during the meeting. That way, more people can look at it if they're not turning in for the workshop. Yeah, if the council's okay with that. Okay. Eric, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Turn it over to Andrew Kroll. Right now, we're going to talk about the City Council's vision.
Can you read that? All right. Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'll work through some of these. We're not going to read all of these, but what I wanted to provide you, and we'll make them available. We'll make them available to the public in the next packet, and then I'll also provide this to you in an email, Council. So you have five goals that came from your strategic planning session when you first took office at the beginning of your term. And from those 5 goals, we ended up pulling the statements from the strategic plan that aligned with those goals that you had identified. So when you look at planning for a better future, attract quality businesses by creating an environment where businesses can succeed, enrich lives, and promote community life in Auburn. those are statements that came from the strategic plan that involved probably over 140 individuals through either staff or business partners and community members. What we've been able to do is have the departments provide you an update on what has their department done to help meet those goals that you had laid out. So I'm just going to use a couple examples here, but it's really more for you to be able to take and digest later on. But I'll take business and community development under the initial goal of planning for a better future. They provided an update here that just the department has implemented 6 initiatives to support small businesses and entrepreneurs in the community. These include a micro enterprise loan program offering up to $7,500 for low-income or underserved business owners, a revolving business loan program providing up to $150,000 to new and expanding businesses, a corner store grant program offering up to $35,000 in funding to improve food options in neighborhoods, and then an active involvement in strengthening the Lewis and Auburn program, Strengthen LA program to address workforce issues in the city, and then also participation in the recovery friendly workplace initiative to support the hiring of individuals in recovery. And then the last one is the simplification of documentation and processes for clients to make it easier to do business within the department. So some of those initiatives are ones that you directed through funding. Some of these were funded through ARPA. Other initiatives are what the department is doing based on the goals in their work plan through CDBG that they've outlined with HUD. So this gives you a good snapshot. Okay, what has that department done to help meet that specific goal? And you'll be able to go through and see under each one of the goals what's been accomplished. As you scroll down, you'll see, there we go. Each department from city clerk, communications, they're all weighing in on each one of these goals and initiatives that they've implemented. Some of them are continuing to serve or continuing to streamline business licensing or continuing to do certain functions. That's for some departments. That's what they're working on. They continue to do that. That's really their primary initiative. But you'll see others where they're doing a lot more, and those are because they're specific to those departments, what those departments are tasked with, and it aligns with the direction that you've given as a council. And I think a good example of that is this second goal with reclaiming our streets. Our communications and engagement department, they've installed, decorated, promoted pop-up shops. This is the down in Festival Plaza that we had throughout the holiday season, beautifying the downtown area, bringing more visitors into the city. They designed and installed signage for public art, promoted the art unveiling events, increased use of electronic signs, light pole banners, beautifying downtown and promote the city, supported public works beautification efforts with planters, benches, street planting, promoted recycling, sustainability, composting, and other initiatives, created a story map to highlight the city's sustainability efforts, worked with the downtown coordinator to improve Riverwalk, Story Walk installations, created Court Street Transportation Survey to help improve walkability efforts, created and shared public safety alerts, educational materials, and anti-crime initiatives, including Neighborhood Watch, National Night Out, motorist safety, information, fire prevention, and much, much more. So that's what you're going to see as you go through this document. I really encourage you to provide me any feedback you have once you've had a chance to review it. We'll continue providing updates, I think, as we move forward. Right now, the council had requested that we do another retreat, so we're scheduling that in March. You have that in your work plan, so we'll schedule that in March. From now until then, we'll make sure we update this, but that'll be an opportunity for you to take a look at those goals. What else would you like to work on? Hopefully that'll give you some time to really think about that before the retreat, and then we could spend some time at the retreat moving forward with, as you move into those final months of your term, what are those other initiatives you'd like to accomplish? So questions about this document? It's pretty lengthy. As you can see, each one has a column going across for the various goals. And then let me zoom back out of here so you can see it. As it goes down, you'll see where each one kind of weighs in on each one of these items. Now, not all departments are represented in each goal. There may not be something specific within that department, but you'll see the majority are in there. So, questions about this? This is something that I told you I would provide an update for you on, and staff's done a good job of pulling all their information together.
I don't think anyone can say we haven't done anything over the last 13, 14 months. So thanks. Appreciate this, Phil.
All right.
We're going to move on. Next agenda item. We're going to presentation right now on tax increment financing. Glenn Holmes. Now, this should be the first presentation on TIFs that this council's actually seen. They don't come up very often anymore.
Just a little bit of overview. I tried to keep it as simple and easy as possible. There's some on the counter evacuate my one as well. So, boss gave me.
We need to be here.
There's nothing on.
Okay.
All handwritten, okay.
Go ahead.
PowerPoint. So real simply, after the cover sheet, the first slide you'll see is what is a TIF. So, and it kind of gives you a small definition there, but it really is about designating a geographic area within the community that you think you want to either develop, redevelop, and you're willing to partner with private developers to do that. So you engage in basically a partnership and you incentivize them to come do something that they may have not wanted to do, or they hadn't thought about doing because it was difficult or too expensive. And this creates that district, and that can be as small as one tax property or an entire section of the community. So we have a number of them throughout the community, downtown, out by the mall, out by the airport. We have different ones. We currently have about 15 active TIFs. So that's the actual designation of the district, which allows that to happen. The next thing you'll see is a credit enhancement agreement, CEA. So what that is the actual document where if you're going to work with a developer in that partnership to really define that and what does it mean. So does that mean that, hey, you know what, we're going to allow you to get a percentage of your taxes back for a number of years so that that's your incentive? Or is it there's a bunch of off-site improvements that need to be done in that area that may or may not be the responsibility of the developer, and maybe we can partner in that and do that. So that way, if the developer is willing to maybe sometimes do that work that we would normally do, but it's much more cost-effective while they're there to do that, we can actually use that enhancement to give them some of that money back to pay for that work. So again, there's 100 different ways, 1,000 different ways you can make these all work together. But the important thing to understand is a tax increment financing district or area is not really where that credit enhancement comes from. That's a totally separate portion within a TIF that you create that is for that purpose. So those are the two terms. When developers come in, they want to TIF it. I'm like, sure, we'll TIF it. Doesn't mean I'm going to give you anything, because without the credit enhancement, it really doesn't have a lot of weight. When is it the right tool? And I'll read this one. When the benefit from a TIF designation is in line with specific strategic directions, general economic goals, and the long-term comprehensive land use goals of the city. That's the only time we should be looking at a TIF and credit enhancement to go along with that, is when we can identify that, you know, we want to develop this area. We've got an area in the community that needs work, things like that. If it all fits together, that's when this is the correct tool to use. And that's how you get, you know, the mall built, you get the Norway Savings Bank Arena built, things like that. Those are big strategic goals that everyone wanted to see happen. Who approves the TIF and the credit enhancement agreement? So you do, locally. So staff would draft, at the direction of city management, a potential TIF, work with an attorney because they're very technical documents, bring that to the city council, and then you would vote whether or not you want to do that. It's a very technical process, specific public hearings, specific notices have to go out, all those types of things. So it takes a little bit of time to get those things done. And then once you're done with that and you approve it, it's then sent up to Maine Department of Economic and Community Development, because what they're looking at is, does it meet state law? So yes, it's an approval from them, but at the same time, it's really about, did you meet all the rules and regulations that the state has put in place to make sure you're, aren't putting too much land into a TIF, aren't creating too much of a value in that TIF, those types of things. So it's all very prescriptive, which makes it kind of easy, because once you know the rules, you just follow those and you know you'll get an approval. But sometimes they do take time as you go back and forth and argue about a few little things sometimes. So the real question is, how do the numbers work? So if you took, with nothing changing for the next 30 years, a 5-acre parcel of industrial land that's currently worth $200,000, and I went out and I found one so I can point to it on a map if I had to, and at the current tax rate, that would be a taxes of $4,550 per year. General fund revenue over the next 30 years would be $136,500. On the next page, if we established a TIF in that, for that parcel and gave it a credit enhancement, so that same 5-acre industrial land is worth $200,000. Approval, a 20-year TIF with a 20-year 50% credit enhancement agreement. So people are going to, whoever develops it's going to get 50% of what that tax bill was back as an enhancement. But they go out and they build a new building on that, and that building is worth $2 million. That's what the tax assessor went out and figured it out, and it's $2 million. So now you have the original assessed value, or the OAV, which remains the same at $200,000. The new value is what is above the OAV, or $2 million in this case. So the tax revenue from the original is still going to remain $4,550 per year, which will still go to the general fund. And again, I have not projected any increases in taxes, but I know you guys are really tough on keeping these the same. Tax revenue from the new value would be $45,500 per year, which would then go into the TIF account. And then out of the TIF account, the expense comes for the developer, which would get back $22,750 of that, because they get 50% of that increased value. The end result after 30 years is we would collect $1,501,500 in tax revenue, of which $455,000 would go back to the developer to be used per the agreement. Another $455,000 in TIF funds would be used for public safety, economic development, and other projects throughout the city to help. And then $591,500 in general fund support, or more than 4 times what you would have gotten if you had done nothing on that piece of property for those same 30 years. The other benefits, and I could have got into a lot of math and shown you a lot of stuff here, but I really think it's important to understand that these are, in my mind, great benefits, but they're not really about the growth of the community. These are about the financial benefits that occur. So it stabilizes the county tax share, because that $2 million in value, we don't have to pay taxes on to the county. So it kind of keeps our county tax a little more stable. Stabilizes the funding for schools, because again, the new tax value is not added to the state school funding formula, so therefore they continue to pay as if we had less value. And then it also stabilizes state revenue sharing, because new tax value is not added to the state funding formula. But one thing I did find when I was doing this whole project was that more people help the state funding formula a lot. So, just a thought. So, in summary, tax and refinancing is a tool the city can use to incentivize developers and grow the tax base faster than waiting for the market to come to us. Auburn currently has 15 active TIFs. 5 of these are low-income housing TIFs. The others range from single properties to specific areas within the city. These properties have an approximate original value of about $90 million, and the current assessed value is over $200 billion. So you can see how much you're able to set aside and use to make that work. Now, obviously, I'll take questions about any of this, but again, I try to keep it simple.
Thank you for that. It's good. State law mandates that we cannot have more than 5% of our value within a TIF district, correct?
The total TIF districts can't equal more than that, correct?
What are we currently at?
I'd have to go back and look and talk to Jill. It's way on. I mean, we're nowhere near the limit.
I think it was like 3 years ago, it was
Yeah.
like 2%.
Yeah,
or something.
acreage and value, we have got plenty of room to continue to do this.
And you made a comment about more people equals more funding, school funding. Could
Revenue
you
sharing.
elaborate?
On revenue sharing, the way the formula works is I played with it. I was at one point, this was going to be much more in-depth, and I decided that this is easier. But basically, adding population without changing anything is much more beneficial than anything else to that funding formula. So if your tax base stays the same and your value stays the same and you get more people, which means, and your assessment stays the same. So if you can keep your assessment where it's at, but grow people, it impacts the formula dramatically.
You mentioned it, but there's an acreage requirement, not just a percentage of
It's
total
a-
value,
it's
but
a
acreage.
percentage of acres as well, and we're dramatically below that, obviously being a massive city in acreage.
Well, hold on, bigger than Portland, Westford, Cape Elizabeth, and South Portland combined.
Just, could you, I guess it's hard to say exactly what's coming down the road, but are you projecting that we're going to have some of these coming up soon?
Yeah, you'll probably be having at least 2 within the next 30 to 45 days, which is why I want to get this front. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me after the meeting. I'm more than happy to sit down and go through some of the regulations and rules and how they're put together. But when it comes to it, it'll be a big, thick package, and we can go through it as detailed as you need. Belinda?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You said 2 more. Are they going to be added to what is existing, or are these going to be 2 brand-new TIFs and different requirements?
There'll be 2 brand-new TIF districts that will have separate credit enhancement agreements that would go for them. A lot of it is really based on some of the strategic initiatives you folks have set forward of what you want to do with transportation and walkability and those types of things within the city.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. That actually ends our public portion of the workshop, executive session. This time, I'd like to entertain a motion to enter into an executive session to discuss labor negotiations pursuant to 1 MRSA 405, Section 6D. Do I have a motion?
Motion to move.
Motion, Counselor Moran, second from Counselor Walker. All those in favor? We are now by a vote of 6-0 in executive session. We have one more executive session after that, then we'll be transitioning directly into the 7 o'clock meeting. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, before we get going tonight, Councilor Milks has an excused absence. Going to move into our consent agenda items. We have 2 items. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion on the floor from Councilor Staples, second from Councilor Walker. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 6-0. Next to the minutes of the January 3rd regular city council meeting. Are there any corrections? None. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the January 3rd, 2023 city council
Motion to
meeting.
approve.
Councilor Walker, do I have a second?
Second.
Second for Councilor Staples. All those in favor? Passes 6-0. Now on to communications, presentations, and recognition. First off, I would like to, we're going to have a presentation from the Auburn Public Library. Amy, you can come up now. In honor of libraries, we must whisper. Hey, you like that? You're the only one that laughed. Thanks, Rick. On the inside? Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, Mr. Manager, Mr. Assistant Manager, and guests. I'm Mamie Anthony. I'm the director of the Auburn Public Library, and I'm here tonight to give you somewhat of an update of what's going on and how we share our resources. So I'm going to start with a very brief history. The library was incorporated in 1895. It received a grant from Carnegie, Mr. Carnegie, in 1903. And they built a nice little library, which you see up in the upper right-hand corner. And then over the years, it has changed, and finally in 2006, they opened up a new library, which had been expanded, the same library, but it had been expanded to 33,000 square feet. So we do very well with our space. So just a quick overview of the organization. We're a tax-exempt organization. We're not a city department. We have a board of directors. I'm the library director. We have 4 departments and 21 employees, 9 full-time and 12 part-time. Our statistics are improving as we get further away from COVID. Our visits per day are up actually 32% over last year. Our website visits are about the same. Our circulation is 85,000, which is up 24%. Our collection is still about the same number, a little bit higher. Our program attendance has doubled, and our computer usage has gone up 20%. So it's very nice to be coming back from being closed for so long and having to be so careful. We're still very careful. The staff wears masks, but we recommend masks, but we feel very good about all of our policies and procedures now. So what we're about, our mission is to engage, enlighten, and enrich, and our goals are to connect with the community, provide meaningful services, and stay current with the library profession. Side by side, thinking about how we operate with the community, I have a list of some of the boards and committees that people serve on. We have a very involved staff. Our professional involvement is also robust. Our Reading Roundup is a yearly conference, one-day reading conference for school and public librarians who deal with children, and it is a fantastic program. I'm serving on the Maine Library Commission. Our children's manager, Brandon Dyer, is serving on the Maine State Library Regional Board, and he's also serving on the Reading Roundup Committee. We do a lot of out-of-library programs, and for example, we do story times at Early Promise Education, we do LA Reads, and we do prop-up libraries at senior housing. We take a selection of books at least once a month out to Schooner and Sarah Fry, and it runs like a little library. They come in and they check books in, and we check books out to them. We do special programs also, movies and volunteer work for agencies such as Opportunity Enterprises and Murphy Homes. Their residents and clients are charged with doing so much volunteer work every year, so we're happy to accommodate them too. They come in and they clean books, and they will maybe do some organizing of programs for us. So it really depends on the individuals that are there, but it's really worthwhile and it's fun to see. Side by side, looking at how we deal with the City of Auburn, you provide 80% of our funding, and you also run our payroll. APL provides meeting rooms. Meeting rooms are primarily for library programs, but then comes the city and then the school department after that, and then the general public. We have a backup system storage located in the bowels of the library. We did COVID programs for school children. We also host AVEC programs, and that's Androscoggin Valley Education Consortium. And they come in sometimes once a month, where they bring in talented and gifted students, and they do special projects. There's a writing one, a math one, science one. Out of library programs, we do the summer rec reading, which is one of my favorite things about being at the Auburn Library. We do Auburn Night Out, and we do programs at the Senior Center. Currently, we're doing a tech help program and running a book group. So we still have some challenges, as always. It's funding. We have an annual appeal. We do have an annual fundraiser. Maintaining our community connections. We're always looking for additional partners or ways that we can get out and speak about the library, such as this, and adapting to changing library needs. The profession has changed dramatically in the last 5 or 10 years. So we're still hosting cats from the Androscoggin Humane Society, and currently our residents are Tom and Felix. They are fabulous cats. I'm putting in a plug for them because they are up for adoption. They do need to go together because they have bonded, and they are just the sweetest cats. And then we still have our library cat, Sonny, who is the director of morale and mischief, and he's very good. He likes to read, and then he also likes to do a walkabout every morning before the library opens. So he happened to be in the travel and language section that one day. He was checking out the study carrel, seeing if anybody needed any help. But anyway, so we do have some fun. And that is my presentation. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
If I could you just go back a little bit? Not attendance, readership, visits are up now. Are we seeing that positive trend since 2020?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Significant. Are we pre-COVID levels yet, or?
Not quite. But, and other libraries are experiencing the same thing too, that they are finally starting to get their numbers back.
Okay. So we're right there.
Yeah.
Trend, nothing,
Yeah.
no outliers.
Yeah, and we still do a little bit of curbside pickup for people who are still uncomfortable about coming into the space. So they call and we'll have the books ready for them.
All right, thank you. Is there any other questions for Mamie? No? Thank you very much. Always enjoy you coming and giving us a brief
Thank you.
annual. When's the big fundraiser again?
We're in the
bag.
process of designing a new one.
Okay. By the way, I got one last year and phenomenal savings. So that was a pretty good. I'm looking forward to it this
Yeah,
year.
what we had been doing is book around town, where we would provide a bag of goodies that were donated by a number of different merchants, gift cards, soaps, just all kinds of things. The community has been very, very generous with their donations.
Now we look forward to it again this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night. Next, I'm going to turn it over to the city manager for some communications before we go back to council.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, in your packet, the notification from the clerk to the club LLC regarding business license denial. That's just requiring in the ordinance for us to notify you of that correspondence. We'll be working with the business owner regarding that license denial in the next 2 weeks. But that's just to put them on notice and regarding outstanding fees within the city that need to be paid before the license is released.
Communications, we'll start off with myself. Not that many right now. I will say Burnt Ends Barbecue. They're actually out in Lewiston and Sabata Street. They are owned by Jill Cunningham, who works for the city, and her husband, Kevin Cunningham. 11 o'clock, January 23rd, 1-year anniversary. So it's always great to support some Auburn folks out there, even though they might be in Lewiston. They got great barbecue. So that's the only thing I have to communicate. We'll start over here. Any communications on that side? How's cross-country skiing going?
We need to do a snow dance.
Yeah, snow down, yeah, we do. Maybe.
I'd just like to extend my personal appreciation for everybody that's involved with the Auburn Public Library. My wife is a school teacher here in Auburn and is a frequenter of the library. And my 6-year-old son really enjoys going there. There's a bunch of wonderful activities. They're always getting the children involved, and a huge part of why my 6-year-old is now a prolific reader and teaching me new things every day.
I have a couple. United New Auburn Association will be January 31st, Tuesday night at Rowley's Diner. We have the chief coming, Auburn Police Department chief coming to be our speaker. So come and see what he's got to deliver to us. Also, Thursday, January 26th, Neighborhood Watch Meeting. We have been pretty lucky. We've had the district attorney and a few other people coming to be part of our evening out. So that starts at 6 o'clock up at the 6th Street Congregational Church. So hope to see you there.
Okay. Also, we're going to move on now to, oh, you had something, yes.
Just one thing, 2 things. First, City of Auburn has been participating in the entire event campaign for 2022. They did send out some stats regarding this. In the 100-day campaign that they had, their goal was far exceeded. So they hired 186 veterans. The average hourly wage of a veteran hired during this campaign was $32.12. 40 female veterans were hired. 102 participants attended 11 educational programs to serve veteran and non-veteran job seekers and employers. 209 total employers signed onto the campaign. 16 counties have been participating in the campaign. 25 spouses and family members were hired during the campaign as well. Just for Auburn members, we went and took a look at our hiring since July 1st. And 30% of our new hires were veterans as well. So I think that's great work by our team, our HR team that's been really working at ensuring that we are reaching out to our veterans and providing opportunities. Just for numbers wise, that 30% is six veterans that were hired since July 1st. So great work. Thank you, Counselor. I probably forgot to push it. So hopefully everybody heard that. That's it. Oh, sorry, one more. So I'm hearing from counselors regarding schedule in February, and we have quite a few conflicts that are coming up. What I would propose, Mayor, is that a counselor would, under new business, suspend the rules, schedule a council meeting for February 13th, and then cancel, in that same motion, canceling the February 6th and the February 21st meeting to ensure we have good participation.
We want to go about Maine State Housing, or no? Okay, very good. Okay, well, we'll handle that if the counselor so chooses under new business. We're going to move on to the first open session of the night. I'm going to open this up to members of the public. You're invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business, which is not on tonight's agenda. Please step up to the podium, give us your name and address, and if you could, limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Bruce Ryu, 85 Mary Carroll Street in Auburn, and I'm here to ask the Auburn City Council to add to their February agenda either a workshop and a vote, eventually a vote, and that is to use taxpayer funds or development fees to reimburse the ratepayers of the Auburn Water District for the cost of the litigation for the Lake Auburn lawsuit that the city of Lewiston has brought against the city. So far, the Auburn Water District ratepayers have paid about $51,000 as of October 31st. That's the last number I could get, for legal fees for a suit that we have no desire to be involved in and really nothing to gain for the efforts. And the bills, I'm sure, November, December had more bills, and there'll be more in 2023. The City of Auburn hired FB Environmental twice to support and justify the city's desire to increase development in the watershed, change boundaries, change zoning, and rewrite the rules that have successfully protected the drinking water for tens of thousands of people in our community. These changes forced Lewiston to sue Auburn to put a stop to them. Somehow, the Auburn Water District became the target of the lawsuit, even though the changes are being pushed and implemented by the City of Auburn. Because the Planning Board and City Council is at the forefront of the changes, the City of Auburn attends and has input into the litigation. This is a City of Auburn taxpayer issue, not a Auburn Water District ratepayer issue. As a ratepayer, I have no desire and nothing to gain by paying legal fees that benefit Gendron Construction or a handful of developers in the watershed. The areas of the watershed that will see increased housing will have wells and septic systems, and they're not even serviced by the water district. The city will see increased tax revenue, so maybe that's how you're justifying making these changes. I'm not sure what my procedure should be to get this on the February City Council agenda, but please reach out to me directly or through my city councilor, Leroy Walker. He can get a hold of me, and I'll do whatever I have to do to get this on your agenda. Thank you very much.
So anybody else would like to speak during tonight's open comment?
Pam Rousseau, 745 West Auburn Road. And mine has to do with, I was not here at the last city council meeting. I thought, oh, I'll just watch it online. There was no place for me to make any comments. If I can only make a comment if I can't come here to this meeting in person. And I think there should be a way for you to open the comments on the city council, like what's going on right now. Thank you.
Just to clarify, there is, we do, in fact, we had one tonight. You can email the clerk, and she will print that email off and make sure we have hard copies or forward that to us. So there is mechanisms in place if you cannot come in order to reach out and communicate to the council.
Good evening. My name is Larry Pelletier. I live at 129 2nd Street in the village of New Auburn. I'm here tonight my intent here tonight was to talk about the homeless situation in both cities. And actually, it's nationally. I think we're all aware of the seriousness of this issue in the Twin Cities. I'm afraid there's another storm coming. I've noticed that in the last couple of years, since the boom in real estate sales, that a lot of landlords and management companies and people who own these housing complexes, even in our community, are renovating their apartment houses and pushing people out whether or not they can pay for it, for the increase. And I'm afraid what's going to happen, that a lot of these folks are going to end up on the streets. A case in point, I've got the next street up from me. There's 2 apartment houses there. There's three apartments in each one. There's six families that can live in there. And the owner now has been working the last 2 years, 1 apartment at a time, and consistently moving people out. And where are these folks going to go? And just by coincidence, today I got my AARP newsletter, and there's an article in here, a homelessness crisis grows among older Americans. Americans 55-plus represent a rising part of the national homelessness crisis, and forecasts suggest a dramatic increase in the number of older individuals who will be unable to secure housing over the coming decade. According to an AARP news report, America's estimated homeless count stood at 580,466 as of 2020. 18%, roughly, the population of Boulder, Colorado, were 55 and older. According to the data from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, there's been a trend over the last several years where we're seeing many more older adults who are homeless, says Richard Cho, HUD's Senior Advisor for Housing and Services. From 2009 to 2017, the number of people aged 62 and older who are homeless nearly doubled, Cho says. Soaring housing costs and the worst inflation in America in 40 years have exacerbated the situation. Advocates say the shortage of affordable housing has hit older Americans especially hard, says Rodney Harrell, Vice President of Family, Home, and Community for AARP. We don't have enough housing options, particularly for folks with lower incomes, Harrell says. And goes on to say the full report you can read, AARP homeless after 50. I'm 75, I own my home, but anything could happen. You know, I could run out of money tomorrow, and you know, people think about that. So.
If you don't mind, if you could just leave that with the clerk,
Okay.
that article. I'd like to read it later. Thank you, Larry. Is there anybody else in the first open session of the evening? If not, I will now close it. Okay. We're going to move on to unfinished business. Next is Order 160-1205-2022, allocating up to $180,000 from the American Rescue Plan ARPA funds for the purchase of a portable stage. This item was postponed to the December 5th, 2022 meeting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Do I have a second? None being, this order fails to make it to the floor. Next is Ordinance 01-0103-2023, amending the Code of Ordinances, Section 16-49, Security Systems, and Appendix A, Fees and Charges under Emergency Management and Services. This removes a renewal requirement and associated fees. It's a public hearing, second reading.
Motion to approve.
You got a motion, Councilor Walker. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilor Staples on the second. Open this up to the public. Anybody in the public would like to speak about this? Just to remind us all, this is about removing the $5 annual renewal fee associated with home security systems. No public comment. I'll bring it back to the council. Council, any debate? None being, I'll ask for a vote at this time. Roll call? And I'm sorry, do we call you Master Clerk now after that new award you just received? It has a ring to it. Okay.
No. Counselor Whiting.
Yes.
Counselor Hawes.
Yes.
Counselor Moran.
Yes.
Counselor Walker.
Yes.
Counselor Staples.
Yes.
And Counselor Gary.
Yes.
6-0 passes. Next is Ordinance 24-1205-2022. Zoning map amendment. It's amending a portion of 150 Andrew Drive, parcel ID 347-003 from agricultural resource protection and low-density country residential zoning to the suburban residential as recommended by the Planning Board. This is a first reading. A public hearing will be held at the second reading of this item. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion, Councilor Walker, second for Councilor Staples. Open this up to the public for comment. Is there anybody in the public that would like to comment? While we wait for that, I will bring up to everybody's attention. We do have a survey that was generated and circulated by residents of Auburn and certified 41. That's in front of you right now. Okay? Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak? None being, I'll bring it back to the council at this time. Council, is there any debate? Councilor Staples?
Yeah, when I first saw this, I wasn't so sure about it. It's one of the first times that I've seen one of these petitions come forward to the council where a citizen has petitioned the planning board to do a zone change on one parcel. So, I took a real good look at it, and I thought, at first, my initial reaction was, no, this doesn't make sense. As I looked into this a little bit more, I looked at the neighborhood and saw an established pattern of residential development along this road and in an abutting parcel that is suburban residential. And I started to think a little bit more about it, and I thought, this maybe this does make sense. So reading the comp plan, the comp plan describes the purpose of development as building from the core outwards. And this is really kind of a natural progression. So we're starting to build a little bit further out. So I think, in this case, I started as a no. I read into it a little bit more. I looked into it, and it seems to make sense. So I'm a yes on this one.
Any other comments? Councillor Whiting?
I took a drive up there. I've lived in Auburn most of my life. Moved here when I was 10 days old. I had never been to the end of Andrews Drive. I skied on Mount Guile when I was a kid. I had no idea that the topography was as steep as it is, and the soil conditions are not real great. And even though I was on several comp plan committees that recommended expanding it, I think there are better ways to deal with it, and I will not support it. I think would be better to go back to the comp plan, go back to the neighborhood, have a discussion about what you redevelop and where, and certainly most of it is undevelopable anyways. But the result of this, if we pass it as presented, you will have a house here that's in the ag zone, and then next door to it will be a piece of land that's suburban residential, and then next to it is a house that's in agricultural, and then next to it is suburban residential. And that's, pretty haphazard zoning, and is not something that should be approved by this council without further measures to have consistency in the neighborhood, which would require more process. I know people are sick of process. The planning board had to see it a second time. They didn't really want to see it. There were even comments made by the chairman, why are we even doing this, after hearing about all the difficulties of terrain, topography, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it needs a little more work than what we're probably going to do here.
And just to clarify, if I could, the planning board did initiate a process to bring in conformity the non-conforming lots that are along Andrews Road. I know these lots very, very well. My great-grandparents grew up and lived in a house. My grandmother lived in one of those homes. So I know that area, and they have, and hence why I was always on the planning board, and the planning board acknowledged this, a residential feel surrounding that area. And they do need to clean that up, including on the other side, the east side of Andrews Road, going towards the river. So that is scheduled. I'm not sure when it's going to be scheduled yet, but that was initiated by planning board. So with that said, is there any other debate on this? I just want to make sure we're all clarity on the action.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support the petition by the residents that don't want the zone change in this area. For the simple reason what the good Council Whiting had talked about was the topography. Also, it's ledge and stuff. So in order to be able to do anything, they're going to have to blow ledge. They've already got trouble with runoff, and we're already discussing trying to keep the lake clean and free of debris and stuff. What untold damage without surveyors going in and telling us that what that actually is there. Their blasting could destroy or upset the ecosystem. So at this point in time, I do not support changing the zone.
There's no other comment. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote at this time. This is the first of two votes. Madam Clerk?
Councillor Whiting?
No.
Councillor Hawes?
Yes.
Councillor Morin?
Yes.
Councillor Walker?
Yes.
Councillor Staples?
Yes.
Councillor Gary?
Passes first reading, vote of 4-2. Okay. We're going to move on to new business. First, Order 18-01172023. This is directing the Planning Board to provide a recommendation on a zoning text and map amendment prohibiting any future residential structures and animal farms within the portion of the Lake Auburn watershed zoned agriculture and resource protection. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Councilor Hawes on the motion, Councilor Walker's on the second. Gotta be quicker, Councilor. I'll now open this up to public for comment. Is there anybody in the, any members of the public that would like to speak? If so, please step to the podium, state your name and address. None being, I'll bring it back to the council. Council, this is, we had a workshop on this a little bit earlier today. This is in response to kind of a progression that we've been doing over the last year to protect Lake Auburn and the water supply, specifically within the overlay. This will direct the planning board to go ahead and review the edits, give recommendation, I's dotted, T's crossed, and then it'll come back to us for final action through adoption. Is there any questions, any debate on this?
Yeah, for clarity, so this is, the idea here is to establish a new zone that would be the resource protection zone, I believe, or a conservation zone, depending on what the naming turns out to be. So the comp plan talks about what this would be. There's certain city parcels that would already fall into this, and so I think right now it's just a matter of creating the zone and applying it to this area of land. So as the planning board takes this into account, I just want them to look at what this zone is, and not just in the context of the Lake Auburn watershed, but in the context of how it can be applied in the rest of the city, and to start a discussion about what other parcels belong here. I believe Mount Appetite and along the Riverwalk, I think, were some of the areas that could potentially be there. But in general, I think this is a good step forward for the city.
Okay. Any other debate, comment? None being, I'll ask for a vote at this time. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 5-1. Next is Order 19-011-72023. This is directing the Planning Board to provide a recommendation for a zoning amendment that will prohibit any future subsurface wastewater disposal within 300 feet of Lake Auburn itself. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Councilor Walker, second by Councilor Moore, and open this up to the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to comment on this motion? Again, this is moving to direct the Planning Board to provide a recommendation back for us for action, and it will prevent any new septic systems from being built within 300 feet of the water line. Comment? Debate? None being, I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Passes 5-1. Okay, at this point, that was the last item under new business.
Make a motion to suspend the rules.
I have a motion to suspend the rules. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor Whiting. All those in favor of suspending the rules? Yeah? Yes? I could. Thank you. Passes 6-0. The rules are suspended. At this time, I probably entertain a motion to cancel the February 6th and February 21st City Council meetings and implement a new City Council meeting on February 13th. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Councilor Whiting, second by Councilor Walker. Any debate on this? Just a little, between February vacation and a run of Monday holidays, I think this is actually needed. So that will also be the date of my State of the City address. So we'll have that wrapped in. It'll be a good meeting. Sue, before we go any further, order number, we're good on order number? On this would be 20?
Yes, 20.
Order number 20, very good.
Yep.
Any other comment? None being, ask for a vote. All those in favor? Opposed? None being? Passes 6-0. Okay, I'm going to open this up to the last open session of the night. Members of the public are invited to speak to the council about any issue directly related to city business, which is not on tonight's agenda. Please step up to the podium, give us your name and address, and limit your comments to about 3 minutes. Okay, nobody for the second open session? I'll now close that open session. We're going to go on to reports. Mayor's report. There's been some news lately about the high school and cost overruns. We are getting involved. I think it's full court press on the municipal side as well as on the school side. We have a meeting set up. I set a meeting up with the governor to discuss this specifically. Next week, we'll be discussing this with the general contractor as well as some subcontractors as applicable. So we will move fast and very efficiently and effectively, I hope, into making sure that we can guarantee that we have an open time for this fall for the new high school. Okay, we have some significant issues with PVC mitigation, which seems that most schools built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s had PVC in abundance, which is a toxic chemical within the mortar joints. So we're dealing with issues that a lot of other schools are going to be dealing with as well. Namely, it seems that everybody in Ohio is immune to PVCs because that's where we have to ship it to have it buried. I know you're from Ohio, but it's bad for Mainers, good for Ohioans. So we have to deal with that one. So that's one. Second, the school board right now is also discussing and prepping on budget. We're discussing the MOUs between the municipal side as well as the school side. As chair of the finance committee, we had that discussion last week, very, very productive. I think Auburn continues to move forward and frankly pave the way for efficient forms of government and collaboration between the school and the municipality. Very interesting and exciting to see how that works out over the next couple weeks, couple months. Okay? Those are my reports. Any other reports from the council before I turn it over to the city manager for announcements?
Yeah, I had a meeting last week with LATC, the regular meeting. We discussed upcoming budget stuff, and the municipal budget, the municipal portion of the budget for the bus has been offset in the last couple of years by federal funding, and that funding is run out for this year. So we've been notified that the municipal portion of that budget might be going up, and I asked them to look into creative ways to make that go down to what it was in the last couple of years. So we'll see what they come up with for a budget, but I wanted to tell the council that in advance.
Thank you, Councilor. Any other reports on committees?
Yes, we've got a 911 meeting at Auburn City Hall Thursday morning, 8 o'clock. So if you want something interested, come on over and listen to us. 911 will be there talking about all of the budgets and problems we have as well. The other thing is Age Friendly will be doing a spaghetti dinner on February 14th. So if you'd like to come out for Valentine's dinner there, come over at 12 o'clock at the Senior Center at Pettingill Park. And it is no cost. You can donate if you'd like, but we'll feed everyone. Just sign up, please, through the Recreation Department. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'm sorry. Continue. Down the road. Nothing? Nothing?
Just a request of the city manager. Mr. Pelletier raised a point about homelessness, and I was wondering if there's any word on the state. Maine Housing has a program. You got it? Great. Thank you.
And with that segue, nicely done. No prompting. Turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Councilor Whiting, for opening that for us. So as I reported, it looked like there was going to be some movement at Maine Housing regarding funding for a winter overnight warming shelters. And so, as administration, we hit a pause on some of the efforts that we were working on to see what that funding might be shaping up to look like. We received the information this morning, and during that time, staff under Glenn Holmes and his team within Business and Community Development completed a draft application. So, Council, what I will be proposing is that we'll submit this application to the state. This would provide 68 individuals overnight bed and space to be converted into a daytime warming shelter as well. We will propose this to be at 121 Mill Street in Auburn. There were two types of funding you could apply for. The first one was a short-term overnight shelter facility that would start immediately and would end April of 2023. So just a few months. But it would get us through these next few cold winter months. That is the one that we've applied for, or that we will apply for. The long-term grant was not one that really fit for us as a community, but we felt that we have this space that's available. We felt that this space should be used if it can be, and this application would be able to do that. I believe it's around $250,000 roughly that we'll be applying for. $50,000 could be used through some of our HUD funding, and the rest will be coming proposed for the state to fund. So council, that'll be coming back to you if this is approved. So if they say yes on this grant application, before we accept that, it would come back for you for approval for that use of that building, as well as receiving these funds.
I'm going to assume that as soon as we get notification, I will call a special meeting, or you can call a special meeting, and we'll try to get a quorum so we can act upon that immediately.
That's correct, Mayor.
Okay.
And then I just have a couple more items.
Oh, of course.
The director of the 911 center was here at the last meeting. You asked for information regarding non-emergency calls. He did provide an update for that. We'll make that available. We'll also make it available in the packet for the next meeting. I received that today. And then the last item I have is just recognizing staff. I'm a little late on one or two of these, but we have had some recent accolades come out through different organizations regarding our staff, and I just want to bring your attention to them. One, I don't believe I mentioned it, but our Brian Wood here, our assistant city manager, received the finest under 40 under the chamber. And so great to be under 40 again. So nice designation. So our city clerk, as the mayor was alluding to, has received the designation of master clerk. That's a great recognition. A lot of certifications to get to that level. So we're really proud of Sue and the work that she did. And lastly, also received last week notification that our finance director and her team within finance received a certificate of achievement for excellence in finance reporting. That is 29 years running for our finance department. So great job by them and the work that they did. Yeah. That's all I have, Mayor.
Well, speaking of master financing, can we call you that? Master Financial Officer? We're going to move on to the finance report. I'll entertain, excuse me. We have a memo from Jill. Jill, do you want to give us some highlights? This is your monthly. Everything's going well. We're making payroll. I've looked at it, and we're on target with everything, correct?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Nothing is standing out that, I'm worried about. The percentages were a little lower, but it's just mostly timing. And dollar-wise, it's higher, but percentages are lower because the budget went up, so.
Good.
But I will continue to monitor it, which I do all the time. So, and if I see something that stands out, I discuss it with Phil or the department. So,
very good. At this point, I'd like to entertain a motion to accept and place on file.
Motion to accept finance.
Councilor Walker.
Second.
Second from Councilor Moore. Before I ask for a vote, are there any questions from the council? Any questions, clarifying comments? No? I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of accepting the December financial report? Passes 6-0. There we go. There are no more executive sessions for tonight, so at this point, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Councilor Moore, Councilor Walker on the motions. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Silence. We now stand adjourned. Have a good